Welcome D20 players. Let's take a look at the Delian Tomb from MCDM. This is the Draw Steel starter adventure, and these are some tips that I learned having run the adventure. It is a big open sandbox and a lot of fun, and Chapter 2 is a main sandbox part of the adventure, so let's take a look. If we zoom out here on my Roll20 setup, we can see the region that the adventure takes place in and around the village of Broadhurst. The heroes, having just returned from the Delian Tomb, where they were able to explore the first level, put it into a sacrifice that was happening there, save Violet, return back to the village of Broadhurst with Violet, and then try to find some way to get to level 2 of the Delian Tomb. And that is the introduction to the village of Broadhurst. You also have the village square map here, and then there is the Arixx lair you can explore, the Forsaken Wraith Fort you can explore, the Mage Tower, the Werewolf Den, level 2 of the Delian Tomb, and level 3 of the Delian Tomb. So a lot going on in this chapter. Let's take a look at the book itself here. The Delian Tomb adventure comes with an adventure book, which we're looking at here. It also comes with an encounter book, which goes into details for each part of the adventure. We will look first at the adventure book and kind of go over in order what the book has. So we have tracking respites, very important for this adventure. Let me just go over kind of an outline, and this outline will be in the description below, so you can grab it and use it for your reference. Okay, so pacing, assuming you're running 3 to 4 hour sessions at a pretty good clip, you're probably going to run maybe around 8 sessions for part 2. It's really sandboxy, so it can go in any order. But here's an order it might go in. So exploring Broadhurst, and then the Arixx Nest in session 1. The Tomb, level 2 in sessions 2 and 3. Sessions 4, 5, and 6, Fort Forsaken, the Mage Tower, the Wolf Den, and then session 7, 8, Tomb level 3. And again, that can go in any order. And that's kind of the beauty of this adventure. And the characters don't have to go to every part either. They might not get to the Mage Tower or the Wolf Den or Fort Forsaken. There are a couple of rival bands here in town. There's the Gilded Hand, which are rival adventurers. They have the ring that you need to get to open Tomb level 3. They can't get Tomb level 2 open, and they're watching for the heroes to do that. Then they're going to capitalize on that, get into level 3, and take the cup of Iulius as fast as they can. They have one member of the band which is conflicted, which the party might be able to use to get to their side, to get that ring to open up level 3 without having to confront the Gilded Hand itself. That's potential for the party. I really like the intrigue there that the party can capitalize on. Then we have dwarf merchants that are in town from Kal Kalavar. They're here to sell some stone, but some of them were taken captive on the way into town, and so they need magic items, not ransom money, but ransom magic items to get their captive friends back, and the party could help with that. If the party doesn't help with that, tempers will flare and they could confront the dwarf merchants. Okay, so an overall timeline of the adventure. Party's returning from the Delian Tomb level 1. Ashleigh, of course, will thank them, take Violet home. Party will go back into the Featherbed Inn, probably to rest. They can meet the Gilded Hand there. They can notice the dwarves there. The next day, when the party starts exploring the village, Abbott Loric will approach them. He'll introduce them to the village itself. He'll discuss the goblins with them, discuss the tomb with them. And there's a lot of knowledge they can find from Loric and just wandering around the village with him in that way. They will also notice the next time they're in the Featherbed Inn that Illwyth of the Gilded Hand is eating alone. And this is their intro to the fact that she's kind of on the outs with them. Then, if 5 respites pass and the party does nothing, they will have the Tavern Brawl event with the Dwarves as tempers start to flare with the Dwarves. There's other things that can trigger this, which we'll look in the adventure for. A couple more respites pass, the Wraiths will raid the village. Other things can trigger that as well. Several more respites pass, up to 10. There'll be a full moon and a werewolf will come to the village. So we'll get into the things that can trigger those earlier or how to prevent them from happening altogether. Now, as I said, the Gilded Hand is watching for level 2 of the tomb to get opened. So if they find out the party did it, the party tells them or they witnessed it somehow, then the next day they're going to go into level 3 and get the cup. If they suspect the party has opened it, and this will have to do with interactions they have with the party, which we'll go to in the adventure, then after 1 respite, they're going to go get the cup. And if they just find out from someone else, the party told someone else and word spreads, After 2 respites, they'll go get the cup. So watch for that. The Gilded Hand, once they get the cup, after 1 respite, Weldir, who is the proprietor of the Featherbed Inn, will give the heroes a note from Illwyth that will tell them the Gilded Hand has the cup. There's a couple ways the party could have a showdown with the Gilded Hand. If they try and steal the Knight Commander's ring and fail, or if they succeed, or if they're caught stealing and fail, or if they're caught eavesdropping, or if they fail negotiations with Illwyth to get the ring badly enough. These will all lead to a showdown with the Gilded Hand. And then finally, once they have the Cup of Iulius from level 3 of the tomb, or the Jagged Edge gets it because the Gilded Hand took it and gave it to the goblins, then that triggers things that go into the next section of the adventure. But within 3 respites, Broadhurst will be attacked. And as time passes, the goblins get stronger and stronger. So that'll really ramp up the pressure time-wise. But a lot going on. Wanted to give you an outline of how that all looks. Let's look at the adventure now. So tracking the number of respites is important. Like we looked at in the outline, very important. What's the underlying plot here? So the Queen of the Goblins wants the Cup of Iulius to get strong and rule this area. The heroes can find out in Loric's library that there's an amulet that'll let them get to the 2nd level. They can also find out there's a Knight Commander's ring that's needed to get to the 3rd level. They can talk to Orson, the charcoal burner, who's not who he seems, and learn about the amulet being taken during an Arixx attack. And they can just notice that Illwyth is wearing the ring. Illwyth of the Gilded Hand is wearing the ring. They'll need to get to level 3. So the Arixx Nest, like I said, this is probably going to be the end of your first session. If the heroes speak to Orson, and there's a good reason for them to, then they will go fight that Arixx and get the amulet to get them on to level 2 of the tomb. The Forsaken Wraiths, this is really mostly a side quest. Nothing really needed here specifically for the adventure. But Vaughn could direct them the carpenter, direct them to these bandits, and they could be also investigating the disappearance of food. And eventually, if they don't do anything about it, the Forsaken Wraiths will attack. Now, when I ran this, the party finished it in 6 respites, and so they never got to the automatic attack of the Wraiths. It's nice having that time pressure, then those things will happen if they don't do things on their own. You have the Mage Tower. 2 things can get you going here. You have, and this is also completely a side quest, not necessary for the adventure. The heroes can speak to Hiram, the cobbler, who's waiting for a shipment that never arrived, or they can speak to Dunquat, the stonemason, or the dwarf merchants, or the Tavern Brawl event. All this could, give them this information about the Mage Tower. And the last side quest is the Wolf's Den. They can talk to the Furrier. They can talk to Furrier, I think. They can talk to Mikhail, the carpenter. They can realize that Mikhail has actually been bitten. And if they figure that out, that might drive them to go to the Wolf's Den first. That's what happened when I ran the adventure. And then, of course, there's the full moon event. All right, so we talked about how when the party returns, Ashleigh's going to thank them, take her daughter home. Not long after they get to the village, Abbott Loric's going to approach them. I wouldn't think that'd be that night when they return or that day when they return, because they're probably going to need to have a respite after level 1 of the Delian tomb. So where it says today here in his conversations with them, I'd just change that to previously, whatever it was. He will talk to them about the tomb. So if they mention the cup, the goblins, or the lower levels of the tomb, he can talk to them about, I might be able to get you to the lower levels of the tomb. Queen Bargnot lives. So if the party mentions this Goblin Queen or the Jagged Edge to Loric or Gweldir or Dunquat, they can share some info. And this is also info I might feed a player with some background in history or goblins or something of that nature, so they can share it in character organically during the adventure. I always look for places I can do that. We'll talk about a couple more here. So then Abbott Loric, after he's kind of conversed with the party about the goblins, he'll show them a bit around Broadhurst. And this is where the party can get the introductions to all the different side quests. And then finally, the main quest path is where they go and talk to Orson. And I'd really highlight this. This one's a little odd. Orson, he burns charcoal, lives at the edge of town. He's got some unusual habits, but he's harmless. Anyway, he wants you to see him. Wouldn't say why. I'd highlight that, get the party going that direction. Or the party could also just run into the farmer's land that the Arixx has attacked. It's another way that can happen and should happen, really. So what's next? Party can go any direction they want. And I like that. Now, the village is described now. Each area of the village is described, and here is the Gilded Hand, the rival band of adventurers. Great artwork here. Great artwork. You got a polder, you got a dwarf, you got a wood elf, a human, another human, I think. There's that ring on the wood elf, if any party recognizes that, although it's not drawn with a big giant shield emerald. So what's the Gilded Hand? They found the Knight Commander's ring that gets them to the 3rd level, but they can't get to the 2nd level. They ran into Queen Bargnot and promised her the cup for a huge sum of coin. So they have a goal which isn't good and at odds with the party. They're met after returning from the Delian tomb the first time. Illwyth can be seen dining alone eventually. Party can discern their honesty with an intuition test. I do like how they add this thing, however, Baldorf can tell the group is being scrutinized and quickly adjourns the meeting. I might do something like that for intuition tests in D&D. That's a kind of a really good idea. And also it's kind of odd that that's the middle result and not the low result. I'd put that maybe in both. I mean, it should for sure happen in the lower if it does happen in the middle. There's a number of places where this is done this way, and I don't think that makes sense. Discern Illwyth's honesty, so the party can do that. Press Illwyth for information. Another meeting with the hand. So after unsealing the entrance to the 2nd level. So this is where the hand's going to try and determine, is the 2nd level open? The party returns from the 2nd level for the first time. They're going to be confronted. They can try to lie, and the Gilded Hand will maybe don't buy the lie, assume the heroes are close, or if the heroes roll really well, they're not onto the heroes yet, which is good. But if the heroes tell anyone else, that's bad, and the Gilded Hand's going to go get that cup. They can eavesdrop on the Gilded Hand, try and learn what they're up to. Here's another one where the middle result gets them caught, but the low result doesn't. I would have the low result is no info, get caught. Middle result, get info, but also get caught. Top level, get info, no, get caught. Grabbing the ring, you can try and steal it. Negotiation for the ring. This is an odd one. If the party gets a 1, they're going to have a showdown with the Gilded Hand. If they get a 5, they're going to have a showdown with the Gilded Hand. But if they get a 3 or 4, they don't, because Illwyth will leave Broadhurst. So if she doesn't join the party as a retainer, she'll leave Broadhurst. So I guess, the party probably should be smart enough to know, no, we don't want you to be our retainer. Get out of here. We don't want the Gilded Hand to know that you're working with us now. So I guess it makes sense. If the party gets interest 5 and accept her as a retainer, then the Gilded Hand will have a showdown with. So a lot of ways the party can be confronted with the Gilded Hand. If they don't have a showdown in the village of Broadhurst itself, they can have a showdown on level 3 of the tomb, or even in part 3 of the adventure. Dwarf merchants. Okay, so here's the other group in town. You got some dwarf merchants from Kal Kalavar. I wish I had a good world map of Orlan. But I don't. Nothing I can share that I know of that's perfect for Orlan. They can chat with the leader of the dwarves. He's a friendly enough sort. He has information to share about what they're doing there. They can check his honesty. Again, here's a middle result hurting them, and the lower result doesn't. They can press him for info. Once they know that, hey, he's trying to get Dunquat to give them a magic item in addition to the original planned payment, so he can use the magic item to ransom some of the dwarves that were captured by the mage, the mage's tower. The party can try and convince them to, that, hey, we're going to go get your friends and honor the original deal, etc. If they do really bad, that could get the Tavern Brawl going earlier. Okay, so there's the people in town. Then you have the blacksmith. Basically, you have all the different points in town. So Broadhurst, you got blacksmith, church of the St. Griffin, the Reeves house, the mill and granary, the woodcutter, the smokehouse, etc. Let's look at one that might be, so the carpenter, this is where they can see that he's wounded. Here's a picture of him, and I got a token, and all those tokens I'll put in the description below too, so you can grab the tokens I made from this artwork. If they want to do a reason test, they might recall some lore about werewolves and determine that he was bitten by, or the creature he speaks of is a werewolf. Here's another good opportunity to share this information ahead of time with a character or two that has some skills or background or character abilities that have to do with this kind of thing, such that they can share this information organically rather than rolling for the test. If you haven't shared it with anyone ahead of time, then definitely roll the test as written there. Okay, so there's all these different places the party can go, all these different ways they can trigger events. Well, let's look at the events. So you got the Tavern Brawl with the Dwarves. They can negotiate with the Dwarf and get a 0. They can get caught stealing the Merchant Stone, which is in the stables. They can not solve a dispute, and 5 respites go by. So there's the ways they can get into a Tavern Brawl with the Dwarves. Next one is the Wraith Raid. That was after 7 respites. Or if they confront the Butcher and don't put an end to him or put him in jail or something, then he will win the Forsaken Raid, so they'll attack that night. You have the Full Moon Showdown. This is after 10 respites if the party hasn't gone and taken care of their werewolf already. And that'd get pretty rough. If the party's there still at 10 respites, all sorts of bad things are happening by that time. And then finally the Gilded Showdown. Many ways this can happen. Get caught eavesdropping, get caught stealing, or successfully steal, then finish a respite, or poorly negotiate with Illwyth and get a 0, or take her on as a retainer with a 5. All those things could lead to a Gilded Hand Showdown. All right, so that's everything going on in Broadhurst. And like I said, you're probably going to do Broadhurst and probably the Arixx Nest adventure part in part 1. So the Arixx Nest here, it has everything's kind of described here. Again, in the Encounters book, this is where all the maps and all the monster stats for everything that you might face are located. So here's the Arixx Nest. You have encounter adjustments for different numbers of heroes. You have tactics. You have ending the encounter, so you got to watch this for the victories. If the fight ends in the Arixx fights until 0 stamina, the heroes earn 2 victories each. If the heroes leave, the Arixx doesn't pursue. Great picture, and that's in the token art that I copied below too that you can grab. I made a token of that thing. So here's the Arixx stat block. Make this smaller. You can see it feels like, it's huge. You compare this to a NK in Shadow Dark, where it's like maybe 1 or 2 lines long. Huge difference. This game's so much more about combat versus a game like Shadow Dark, which is so much more about exploration. It's just a huge difference in games. It really depends on your playstyle and what you're there for, what kind of thing you want to do. One really handles combat super ingrained and detailed. I think Shadow Dark can be just as intense as far as danger level, but it's definitely not as granular. Okay, that was the Arixx Nest. You have the Forsaken Wraith encounters. Well, let's go back to the adventure book. I don't like that they split these 2 books apart, and I actually kind of like merged mine together when I printed it out, and it was tough because some things are in one book and not the other book, and vice versa. I'd advise them not to do that in the future. I hope they don't do that in the future. They find a way to put it into one book and together, and easy for the DM to adjudicate on the fly. So you have the Arixx Nest. You got Fort Forsaken, Mage Tower, and Wolf Den. All 3 of those things are optional, and I'm not going to go into great detail about each of them, except that I do have a lot of the tokens that appear in them in the description below, so you can grab those. Let's look at, after you've got the Arixx Nest, you can get to tomb level 2. So you're likely going to go back to the tomb as soon as you can. Start going down in levels of the tomb. There is a map. If we come to, let's go to the top level. Go. Tomb level 2 here. So you come down, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 encounters. One's just exploration here at the end. That'll take you 1 or 2 sessions to do that, depending on how fast you play. I find encounters can take a little over an hour each. They're all pretty involved, pretty long. The first one here, you can maybe get done faster because if you successfully answer the riddle in the first encounter there, it goes real fast. The other encounters are pretty long. So there's level 2 of the tomb. I'm not going to go into detail about all the different parts of that. Pretty self-explanatory how that all works. Level 3 of the tomb, again, once you get to the end of level 2, you're going to need the Knight Commander's Ring, which the Gilded Hand has, to get to level 3. If the Gilded Hand has already gone in, you can follow in behind them. And it's kind of cool how this part of the adventure has 2 different sets of adversaries and state of the dungeon, depending on if you're going in after the Gilded Hand got here or before they got here. If you go in after they got here, the final encounter is with some Gilded Hand members. If you go before they got here, the final encounter is with the undead Delian Knight who is here. Lot of oozes and puddings and things like that. There's some pretty convoluted, detailed encounters. So tomb second level. You have sarcophagus room, basic encounter. You got the Hall of Triumph, which is a puzzle room, which can be pretty easily done. In fact, hero can make an easy reason test to try and recall additional details. And they can ask three questions with a high one, 2 with a low one, and 1 with the bottom one. This was a little too generous. I almost made it impossible to fail the encounter with 5 players. I might look at 2, 1, and 0 on the answers if I ran this again to make it a little bit more difficult. And again, if they, unless they make 5+ mistakes, they don't face every monster. Make 0 mistakes, then they face no monsters. So I would look at that. Then they have the Hall of Regret. This one's tough. That Wall Master is a tough monster to run as a DM. Read that, reread that, read it a third time to see if you can kind of understand what you're supposed to be doing as a DM with that thing. It is tricky. Then you have the Obelisk Chamber, stairs down. Then you come to the Treasury, where you find the ward that blocks level 3. So that's second level of the tomb. Third level of the tomb, likely your last part as you're playing part 2 of the adventure. It has, let's look at that in a little detail. It's got the slide trap. By this time, this was interesting. By this time, the party member that was playing the tactician had this thing called Gum Up the Works where they could stop a trap. So watch out for that. See if your party's got that before you spring the trap on them, because it will really switch. I had to kind of backtrack on a lot of stuff from the very first start of this encounter. It was pretty tough. So watch out for that. Let's look at the map for that. Here we go. Now, these white lines here, I didn't have those on the player or the map layer, so they weren't visible to the players when I started. But it's just nice to have those in case you need to show the players where these where the pit goes to and where it ends up at. So they can slide down into a pit in this room. They have this gauntlet. Disappointing that exploration is just resolved down to a montage test, and then it's back to combat with that. So I was a little disappointed with that. The combat in this last room was pretty awesome. You can watch the actual play, see how each one of these rooms actually played out when we ran it. The only thing I didn't run in the actual play, like I said, was the Forsaken Tomb or the Forsaken Wraiths, because those are optional. They never got to it for Forsaken. All right, that's it for a look at part 2. You can, of course, I got the timeline in the description below. I'm going to make sure I get that down there. I don't know if I'll have room for anything else as far as music goes, but I'll try and fit the tokens in. There's a lot of tokens I made that came from the art for this adventure, and then some I made from other locations. I don't have those to share, but the one that came from the art for this adventure, you can grab those. They're all in the description below. Glass spiders are pretty awesome. A lot of fun. Maps by Miska Friedman and images from the adventure. Knowledge chests, like I said, take the knowledge from the adventure, turn it into things you can share with your players ahead of time, so they can share it organically in character in the adventure. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, leave a tip if you found value here, and check out this next video at your leisure. Thanks for watching, everyone.